Ready?
Mhm.
Okay, so what happened?
When I was 18, my dad died in a work accident.
What was the date, time, and duration of the incident?
The date is 20 something years. It was 1984 in August
Okay, and where did it happen?
at his workplace where they were building a hotel.
How did it happen?
The second floor was not being held properly with the crane, so the second floor collapsed on a lot of the workers.
How did it make you feel?
Well, very sad because I lost my dad and I was just 18.
How did you respond to the incident?
At first, I didn't accept it. I didn't think it was true. I kept thinking, even a couple of days after, that he was going to walk in the door because it was so sudden.
How did you come to know that this had happened?
Well, when I was working, then my brother-in-law came to where I was working about in the afternoon, about 3 or 4, because this happened about at 1:10, and he came by my work and said we needed to go to the hospital because my dad had been in an accident. So I figured he was hurt, but when we were driving, he wasn't heading to the hospital. He headed to the house because he couldn't tell me.
How did you cope with the situation?
That's difficult to answer because it's a long process. First you lost somebody, and then you go through the grieving process. But the fact that it was my mom and my other 2 sisters at the house, losing the head of the household affects you emotionally, and of course we were concerned about finances. So since I was 18, we were all able to, my sisters were 17, able to try to help financially.
Did anyone else see it happen?
Yeah, everybody at the work site, the ones that were not in that area where that floor fell, saw it.
Do you know how many people were involved?
There were 3 injured, and my dad was the only one that died.
What were you doing during this time?
I was actually working, and what the weird thing about it is, this happened. They were setting up a new hotel, and I was at the library at this time, and it was at my lunchtime. That was at my lunchtime at the library, and I hear all these sirens because actually the hotel that they were building was right behind the library, and I heard all the sirens. Of course, never even imagining that was for my dad.
What did you say in response to the incident?
What did I say? I think it was unreal. I just didn't believe it, that it had actually happened. You feel kind of numb. You're just walking through the motions of what you're supposed to do until you feel like, okay, you're back into reality.
How did the rest of the family cope with the situation, in your opinion?
Well, of course, I think the hardest person was my mom. After being married over 40 years, and she was very dependent on him, I think she was the one, of course, affected emotionally and also financially.
Have you talked to anyone about the situation?
Oh yeah, we've dealt with it since it's been 20, golly, that's 20-something years, or is it almost 30? 20-something years. As a family, we just kind of dealt with it, and day to day, and then it became week to week, and then it was month to month, and it was year to year.
What were the circumstances leading up to the incident?
The circumstances, well, it was during an oil fall, not a boom. So my dad was a self-contractor. He had his own business, so he had been looking for employment, and they had contracted him and his crew to work there, and he had just taken the position, and then within an hour, that happened.
How were there any witnesses that were there?
Yeah, all the other, because it was set it up a hotel, so there's my dad's crew, and of course all the other different other contractors, electrical contractors, plumbing. There was a lot of people there because they were in the process of building it. So everyone that's involved in setting up and building a hotel from the ground up were there.
Do you know anyone who could shed light on the situation as well?
Like shed light on,
like the situation or what happened?
Yeah, there was of course, OSHA was called in, and there was an investigation, and I think that the investigation was very thorough, and they determined that the company in charge were taking shortcuts as far as how many cranes have to be allowed to lift depending on the weight limits, and they were trying to cut corners, so they didn't have enough cranes holding up the floor that was required, so that company was held liable.
Did you contact anyone that was in that situation? So like as if they were like a witness, did you try and contact them to see what happened?
Yeah, we contacted the other one of the men that was hurt. He wasn't in my dad's crew, but we wanted to talk to him because he was there, and just to let us know what he saw, because he was there with my dad, because he was hurt in his legs, as he was able to jump out from under the whole slab, but it did hurt one of his legs, so we knew he saw what happened, and he kind of let us know. Everybody just took off running, trying to get away because they heard it coming, collapsing.
Why didn't your dad?
Because when you run, he said he ran the wrong direction. It was too far for him to clear the floor.
How long did this incident last?
It was within seconds actually. The floor collapsed with the crane broke, and it fell.
How did it affect your future?
That I'll probably just never know. Would my life have turned out different if he had been here?
How old were you?
18.
How did you feel about it now that years have passed?
See, I'm still getting emotional. I guess it's hard.
Is there something you could have done to affect the outcome?
Well, since when I go to work, it was around 9 when I left the house, and my dad was still making business calls, and he told me he had a good lead on a job offer. And sometimes I think if I hadn't gone, or if he had to go and do something, had missed the call, maybe he wouldn't have been there. If he hadn't accepted that job, but he was waiting for that call because he wanted that to start, doing that job.
What was the last thing you said?
Well, because I was leaving to work, I said, "Bye, I love you, see you tonight." And that was my last words to him.
Well, thank you.
Oh, that's all? Yeah. See, I didn't mean to